Hi guys, it's Mr. Helmsing here. We're going to talk today a little bit more about reading. I know it's been kind of a focus for us. We're working on Flowers for Algernon. We're talking about different reading strategies, and hopefully you're starting to adjust the way that you read. You're starting to pick up these different ideas about reading. A few things I want to do in this lesson. The first thing is to just kind of recap what we do when we read, those 5 things that we do. So first thing is to activate prior knowledge. Second thing we have is to read or actually transfer the symbols into information. The third is to obviously self-monitor and kind of make sure that we're making the progress we need to. We're reading fast or slowly enough to understand what we need to do. And finally, we need to adjust our reading and thinking. That kind of switches over to the thinking part. That's going to be the basic idea of reading. If you notice that something's wrong during this process and you're trying to adjust your reading, the only other step we have is to employ some kind of a fix-up strategy. Now, we haven't really talked about those strategies yet, but that's what we're going to do before the next acuity test, obviously. So what I want to do is kind of break this down into 3 different phases. Okay, so I want you guys, if you can, just take out a piece of paper and follow along with me. These notes won't be collected, but they are really handy to have because I'm going to be using these phrases a lot in class. So I'm going to divide my paper basically into 3 parts, kind of like we did when we went over this stuff in class, except there's going to be a slightly different way that we're going to look at it for this lesson. Okay, so I have my 3 columns here, and instead of putting my columns down like we did the other day in classes and thinking and reading and distracting, what I'm going to do today is basically break that down into 3 different phases of reading. So we have this one over here. It's going to be a big B for before. The one in the center is going to have a D. That's for during. And the one on the far right is going to be labeled A for after. Okay, and after a while you're going to start to see probably me just use B, D, and A, and I'm going to expect you guys to know what I'm talking about there, before, during, or after reading. So there are certain things we do before reading, and we started talking about that yesterday. And before reading anything really, you should look for a few different things. You should do some associations with what you're going to read. You should identify a reading purpose. Are you reading this for a test, or are you reading this for pleasure? Are you going to have a book report to do on this, or do you just have to answer some multiple choice questions? All of those things are going to basically control how you read. So it's really important to do your homework, so to speak, before you read. So I'm going to jump over here to this column, and the first thing, and this is one of the reading processes, is APK. And as you guys probably know, that's activate prior knowledge. Okay, that's the first thing you do. So I'm going to just label that over here and just kind of put it at the top. I want to put a little bullet by it. Activating prior knowledge should be done no matter what you read. If you're reading an internet article, you're reading newspaper, you're reading a handout in class, activating prior knowledge is fast. It's not a whole bunch of homework. It's not sitting down writing notes. It's just simply familiarizing yourself. 5 or 10 minutes, or excuse me, 5 or 10 seconds, not minutes. Just kind of go through these things in your head. What do I know about this? What do I need to learn? How can I identify these things? Okay. The next thing I'm going to put over here in the before reading is to think more about the topic. So think more in depth. By thinking more in depth, you're going to be looking for maybe questions you want answered. You're going to be identifying a reading purpose, kind of skim through to read. Am I going to be reading this for, like I said, just a couple real quick short answer questions, or do I have to do a full report on this, or is there going to be something else to do later on? So you're kind of identifying a reading purpose when you think about it. And it's more in depth. It might take a few minutes to identify a reading purpose. These kind of get more lengthy as they go, and obviously you don't have to do all of these before you read everything. But in some cases you might want to do some research. If you just don't have that APK, go ahead and do the research. Do some background information first before you start reading, because it probably helps. Okay, and the last thing we're going to do over this on this before side is kind of actually just do a little bit of skimming. And when you skim, everybody knows how to skim read. You've heard it before at least. But you're going to kind of flip through it and look, how long is this book? Is it something I can read quickly? Is it something I can read shortly? How difficult is it? Is the language something I can understand, or am I really going to have to pay really close attention because it's got a lot of vocabulary I'm not familiar with? So skimming would be the last thing I want you guys to do kind of in the before column. Now, there are more things you can do, but for us, I just want to start with these 4 things and really focus on those. Before you read, do these things. Like I said, it's like stretching before you actually do an event or an exercise. It kind of gets you ready to go. So that's going to conclude this lesson. I don't want to make these run too long. We're going to obviously do the other ones in a later lesson, so keep this organizer with you and be prepared to talk about before reading activities tomorrow in class. It's Mr. Helmsing. I will see you guys tomorrow. Remember to stay zombie free and don't get raisin brain. See you guys tomorrow.